Hey, deserving listeners, a lot of you have been asking that I react to the video of Steven Crowder verbally abusing his wife. So, full disclosure, I had never heard of him until y'all started emailing me about this. And so I thought I would watch the Young Turks on YouTube, provide at least an introduction for me and maybe for some of you. So let's watch their coverage. They're going to introduce this, I think.
Right-wing commentator Steven Crowder, who seems to be as toxic as he is publicly in private.
Okay, so I'm learning that he is a right-wing commentator.
In private, with people like his wife, with people like his pregnant wife. Disturbing video was obtained by journalist Yashar Ali, and it reveals that the commentator Steven Crowder is berating his wife, and this apparently is one instance of
Okay, so we're learning that someone sent a journalist a video of the two of them, I believe.
Of what we later found out was many. In this one clip, it's from June of 2021, and his wife Hillary is 8 months pregnant. This is after a week where Steven Crowder announced that he and his wife were getting a divorce.
Okay, so I'm trying to catalog all the details that this is in 2021, June of 2021. And the video was taken then, and this was around the time that they were getting a divorce. Okay, I found the video on Yashar Ali's Substack. Let's watch that. Obviously, this carries with it a trigger warning. Seriously, I don't know what we're going to see, but I'm going to guess that it could trigger some of you and your PTSD. So don't watch this if you think you're going to be triggered by it and harmed.
I drew a boundary. I drew a boundary. No, you just did it. I drew a boundary of abusive and cruel. You were not taking the car.
So this is in the middle of the conversation, so I'm having a hard time understanding. Maybe we'll get some context, but he's saying he's drawing a boundary. I'm also guessing that the video was leaked by her because this is a security camera that they have at their home, looks like, 2 years ago in 2021. And maybe she leaked it as a way to try to out him or something. I don't know.
I drew a boundary. I drew a boundary. No, you just did it. I drew a boundary of abusive and cruel. You were not taking the car. Because if you refuse to do wifely things, then I will go pick up the groceries.
There is no grocery store. I do have
steaks, wood pellets, my grill. I know it's not.
I've been a couple therapist for 25 years, so I am very familiar with couples who are fighting verbally with each other, and this has the tone and the look of that. I'm guessing there was a ramp up to this. Each person, or at least one person, was being hurt or something. I don't know. But it sounds like he's saying you can't take the car because you're not doing your wifely things. I don't know what that means. It certainly doesn't sound like a good indication. I don't know. I'm going to take a guess and say that a lot of people don't like this Steven Crowder individual, but I'm trying to reserve judgment until I see something that indicates that I should be judging something.
But I'll go do it. How about you first? Hillary, how do you respect men? Yes.
Okay, how do you respect men? All right. Now, if this was a couple that I was working with, and I've heard statements like this in session before, usually I would stop where the conversation is going and I would focus on him and I would say, when you say respect men, what exactly are you trying to get at? And we might explore sexism and misogyny. We might explore what he is trying to get at. Usually when men are doing this, it's because they're hurt deep down. It doesn't mean you have to have sympathy for them. It's a triangulation. You've heard me talk about triangulation. When there is conflict between two people, the lower the differentiation level, meaning the lower the maturity, the lower the emotional intelligence, that kind of thing, lower the coping skills, the couple or one person will triangulate a third element. So you might triangulate a friend by saying, hey, you can't believe what my husband did. Or you might triangulate society. That's what he's doing. He is saying there is this rule in society, I think this is what he's getting at, that says you must respect men because you're a woman, you're lesser. And so I don't know how to deal with this conflict. I've tried to deal with it. I don't know how to deal with it, or I'm guessing because usually you don't triangulate third elements, especially in this way, unless you feel like you have no idea what you're doing and you're at your wit's end, so to speak. And so he is pulling in society and saying, I have society on my side. Everyone agrees. And maybe even she has agreed in the past. I don't know. I don't know her politics. He is trying to pull that in as an attempt to win the argument, to get her, I'm guessing, to say something like, well, yeah, I guess you're right that women are lesser and men are superior, and I need to respect men. So, okay, you win. Which, of course, I don't think is going to work. And more generally speaking, in couple conflict, we will do this. You've done this. I've done this. We've all done this. When we get into these kinds of conversations, everyone's trying to win. And when everyone's trying to win, everyone loses.
How about you first? Hillary, how do you respect the man? Yes. How does a man respect? How does a man receive love and respect? No. How does a man respect? No, you're not taking the car.
Stephen,
You're not taking the car.
Stephen,
you are not.
then I will ask them to pick me up.
He's saying you are not taking the car. It's just hard to know what the context here is, but the way it looks is that he is controlling her. He's saying that she wants to go somewhere, it looks like, and he's saying you can't take the car. I don't know. There's so many question marks. Certainly his tone is in the direction of verbal abuse. There's indications of abuse. It could be much worse than it looks, honestly. But if I were to take a guess, I would say that there was an escalation in the fight, and he could be all to blame for that. I don't know. But there's a ramp up to this, and he is, in his way, and I've treated lots of couples with this kind of toxicity. In his very twisted way, I'm guessing he's trying to make up with her, meaning that he's trying to establish some kind of closeness, some kind of indication that she won't leave him. And the fact that she wants to leave the house, maybe because she has to run an errand, or maybe because she wants to get away from him, I don't know. He perceives this as a rejection or potential loss of some kind, and he's getting desperate. Abusive people, in my experience, and I've treated many perpetrators who were court mandated because they broke a law. They were sentenced in a court of law that they had committed a crime, and they were mandated to come to my group, a group that I was running with other colleagues. And I learned firsthand the mindset of abusive people, particularly abusive men. And I learned over time that although it was a very twisted set of behaviors, very abusive, criminal, upsetting, destructive group of behaviors, at the foundation of it all, they were actually trying to retain closeness, which is bizarre when you think about the behavior, but that's usually the case. So I don't know. But that's just my guess, is that he, in a very twisted way, doesn't want her to leave because, if his inner child, so to speak, could talk, I'm guessing that child would say something like, I'm really hurt by everything that's been happening lately, and I'm worried about our relationship, and it's been rough lately, and if you leave, I'm going to be very sad and worried, so can you please not leave?
Stephen,
You're not taking the car.
Stephen,
You are not.
then I will ask them to pick me up. Would you like me to ask?
Oh, that's right.
It's not correct, Stephen.
So then she's like, well, then I'll ask him to pick me up. So it sounds like she's meeting up with someone. And then he says, is that a threat? It looks like he doesn't want her to leave, imprisoning her in his house. That's what it looks like.
No. How does a man make it? No, you're not taking the car.
Stephen,
You're not taking the car.
Stephen,
You are not.
then I will ask them to pick me up. Would you like me to ask?
Oh, that's right.
It's not correct, Stephen.
Get an Uber.
Okay, Stephen, I can't.
Feeling some constraints?
Stephen.
Like, I can't
Stephen.
go. Listen to me. You want to walk out right now? Listen to me. I can't go to the gym. I can't go to my parents. I can't call my friends. I can't be home. You're going to take the car and leave me here. Hillary, just think of how boxed in you've made me.
Oh, he's saying take an Uber because I don't want you to take our one car because I don't want to be boxed in because I don't understand what they're talking about. It is. Maybe y'all know. I don't know. There's just a certain. Okay, I'll just keep watching.
What do you need me to pick up? I'll get it. I'll be back when I'm back.
No, that doesn't work either. You'll be back when you're back. That doesn't work either.
See,
Do you understand the difference between my life being set to the second and you going, I'll be back when I'm back?
Stephen.
And making it work. The only way out of this is discipline and respect.
Yeah, there's so many questions, but there's words in here like respecting men, and the only way out of this is discipline and respect. She is trying, the tone of her voice, the way she's talking, I'm going to take a guess and say that she's being nice and accommodating, and he is not. There's so many questions. Take it from me, as someone who has had couples come into my office in the middle of a conversation like this, and I have the opportunity to drill down on these issues, at least for that session, maybe even for months in the future, we can really drill down on the details and I can understand where people are coming from. So take it from me that just seeing this clip, I don't know if we know anything. Maybe it'll escalate here. Certainly the things that he said thus far raise some major red flags, the tone here, but I don't know. When we saw the Amaranth video, that was so much more apparent. Plus the audio quality was better, so there's that. But in the Amaranth video, it was longer, there was much more detail. That one you could absolutely say some things, but I don't know. This one's harder to decipher.
It's the only way out of it, or we're at an impasse.
We are at an impasse.
Good, because you can't have any discipline or respect. Yeah. There you go. You throw your hand, you give up so easily.
I don't give up, Stephen.
You give up so easily. I just said the only way out of this is discipline and respect. You said, then we're at an impasse.
Stephen, no, we are.
Okay, so she's saying we're at an impasse. And I see this through my lens, which is typically couples coming to me asking for help. Couples don't come to me asking me, well, sometimes they do, asking me to determine who's right and who's wrong. But that's not often very helpful. I mean, sometimes we can talk about, well, in this instance, I think you're the one that's a little more in the wrong. But we can't start off like that because I'll alienate that individual and they won't ever come back. So I have to start more general and we have to talk about what's going to help. And so that's my job. That's what I'm trained to do. That's what my clinical skills are in. I'm not trained to watch a security camera in the middle of a fight and understand what's happening. But again, it doesn't look good for him. And I wonder if, because he's a right-wing pundit, if this has become a bigger story. I've received so many requests to watch this. And yeah, maybe it'll escalate. So maybe I need to. Oh, but anyway, my point is that she is starting to say we're at an impasse, and I think the message, either intended or unintended to him, is I'm done, meaning that there's no use in continuing to have this conversation. And I'm guessing, given the tone of this, that she has run into this many, many times. She's had many conversations with him along these lines and has learned that it's just best to cut your losses and get out of the conversation. She says we're at an impasse. I'll rewind it because he says some very quintessential things that I've seen in my office before or heard described in my office. They'll talk about a fight they had the night before. And the things he's saying is, oh, so you're just going to give up. That is a signal that he doesn't want her to leave and he doesn't want her to give up. He wants to stay in this relationship. He's trying. It's not working. And he's not listening. And his message is respect and discipline. And you need to understand that you're subservient to me. You can't do what you want. I mean, that seems to be the messaging from him, which shouldn't surprise us given his politics, right? So I want to be clear, I'm not justifying it. I'm not even coming close to justifying it. I am condemning it 100%. And if we're going to understand, as I need to understand in order to treat people, I need to understand where it generates from. Sometimes it generates from psychopathy, or what the internet will call sociopath. But psychopathy, sociopathy, antisocial, lack of empathy does exist in the world. And there's a small percentage of individuals that have that problem, but usually that's not the case. Usually where this abusive behavior comes from is because it was learned, it was taught to them, and the individual is having a really hard time establishing attachment security. And so they resort to abusive tactics to retain or to obtain attachment security, but it's fake, right? Because when someone is dominated and coerced into being close to you, it's not actual closeness. They're just terrified of leaving you. And then the individual who's abusive continues to feel aggravated because they're not getting the closeness they're seeking, but they're just shooting themselves in the foot. Meanwhile, they're abusing everyone around them. And so what I do with these individuals is I try to teach them all this and help them. And it's not easy, but I try to point them in a direction where they can actually get their needs met. And then when they actually do that, they don't need to resort to what they were taught when they were young to engage in abusive, misogynistic behavior. And it takes time, but I've done it many, many times, and it works. So that's what I see. I don't know if that's what is happening. But anyway, so I think she has run into this a lot, and she's trying to get away, but she's staying around. So I'm guessing that she's worried that if she just walks off, because I think that's what she wants to do, because I think she literally has somewhere to go, that it will escalate for him and he will become worse. And so that's what it looks like. It looks like she is thinking in her mind, okay, there's no sense in continuing this because he's dug in and he's putting me down. I want to get away, but if I just bolt when he's like this, when I get back, it could be 100 times worse.
It's discipline and respect. It's the only way out of it, or we're at an impasse.
We are at an impasse.
Good. Because you can't have any discipline or respect.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. You throw your hand, you give up so easily.
I don't give up, Stephen.
You give up so easily.
So we saw this with Amaranth in that video, and I've seen it many times clinically and personally, but there's this weird flip-flopping that abusive people will exhibit. And with the Amaranth video, it was much more apparent because we had much more data. But I think we just saw it a little bit here where he's like, well, fine. If you can't have any discipline or respect, then we're at an impasse. And then she agrees. She says, well, then I guess we're at an impasse because what? I'm not going to be submissive to you. I'm not going to give in to you all the time. And then she's like, well, I guess I'm at an impasse. And then he flip-flops to you give up so easily. It's weird. Now, it can have a gaslighting effect. It can have a crazy-making effect. But where the individual is coming from is they're doing whatever they can in their way to establish control because they equate control and power and getting someone to be submissive with attachment security. They are desperate to get to that place. You might even, and I've done this before with abusive people, I will actually in the office establish actual closeness where they're not in power and control. And because of their upbringing and their life, they actually don't perceive it as closeness at first because it looks so foreign to them. Throughout their life, perhaps modeled in their own parents' behavior, the only time there was ever any amount of emotional closeness or security, even though it's just a shred of it and it's fake anyway, was when someone was dominating another person and the other person was being submissive. So the goal of the conversation is that it doesn't matter how you get there. You're just trying to oppose. You're trying to break the other person down. You don't even need to have a coherent argument. That's why this, from the outside and maybe from the inside, if you're her, I think her name is Hillary, that you'll perceive this flip-flopping and you will even maybe bring it up to the abusive person. You're like, wait, didn't you just say? But the abusive person is not interested in having a rational conversation. They're only interested in power and control. That's all they're looking for. And when you finally give up the power to the other person and you submit, then they can relax and then they will maybe even warm up to you. So it has this training effect on the abused individual that, just submit, because the sooner you get it over with, the better. The sooner you can get rid of the abuse, the better. So just do whatever you need to do to get rid of the abuse, and that just means you just submit. Even though in your mind you might not be really submitting, you rinse and repeat that over time. Eventually you start to convince yourself you are submissive, you are stupid, you don't have a good way of judging reality because the abusive person has beaten that into your skull. So I think we're seeing some of that dynamic here.
The only way out of this is discipline and respect. It's the only way out of it, or we're at an impasse.
So he says, the only way out of this is discipline and respect. I don't know what he means by that. I'm guessing it means you will do what I say. And just the body language too, he's just like sitting down and she's trying to get away, but she keeps coming back. And so he's saying the only way out of it is discipline and respect. And if you can't do it, then we're at an impasse, he says. He might even be using her word that she has used against him in previous conversations. I don't know, it just has that look to it. And then watch what she says. Well, then I guess we're at an impasse. And then he flip-flops and says, but hey, you're giving up so easily.
The only way out of this is discipline and respect. It's the only way out of it, or we're at an impasse.
We are at an impasse.
Good. Because you can't have any discipline and respect.
Yeah.
There you go. You throw your hand, you give up so easily.
I don't give up, Stephen.
You give up so easily. I just said the only.
And the nefarious nature of being victimized by someone like this is that you believe that you're dealing with someone that's rational, that if you just convince them of your point of view or your feelings, then the abusive person will say, oh, you know what, maybe, or they'll be influenced. With other people, non-abusive people, that's often how it works. Not always, but that often is at least possible. To the abusive person, nothing is possible. You cannot convince them. The only thing, like I said, that will get them to shut up is if you submit. And you have to do it very noticeably, and you have to do it very convincingly. That's the only thing that will get them to stop arguing with you, typically. So we saw that in the Amaranth video very much. So I think that's what we're seeing. She's stopping and says, no, I don't give up. That's not me. And if I were a little birdie on her shoulder, if I understand the situation correctly, which God knows, I would say, you're wasting your breath. You're trying to argue with him. You're trying to make your point, but he's just using words. And that's important. If you're ever being victimized by someone like this, currently or past or future, you have to really drill into your head that there's no convincing them until the perpetrator gets treatment and really starts to work on their issues. And that can take years, by the way. Until that happens, there's no convincing them. There's no point in trying to convince them. In fact, often to the abusive person, they'll take you arguing with them as opposed to you having an impasse and getting in your car and driving away. They would rather have you there and have a conversation with you, even though it's very contentious, than to lose you, because their attachment insecurity is so great that they would rather have some of you, even though you're fighting, than to have none of you, meaning that you are driving away and potentially leaving them in your mind and in your body.
The only way out of this is discipline and respect. You said, then we're at an impasse.
Stephen, no, we are at an impasse, okay? I love you, but Stephen, your abuse is sick. Your abuse
Watch it.
is
Okay, so we're seeing more here that she's saying your abuse is sick. All right, that gives me some indication that this has been going on for a while, that she either knows from her own experience and education and awareness, or she's talked with other people who have said, that's abusive. What you're telling me what your husband is doing, that's abusive. I don't know. But she has the resolve to say this. In order to say this, I'm guessing this has been going on for years, maybe even since the beginning of their relationship. And so that's what it tells me. And then he's saying, watch it. That's a threat, right? Discipline, he's talked about. Respect. Tell me about your disrespect of men, his body language, the flip-flopping, him saying, watch it. Watch what, buddy? What is it? Now, is he physically abusive? I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know what the allegations are, and I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen in a video like this because I've just heard that it was a verbal abuse example. But let's rewind this and really break it down.
I just said the only way out of this is discipline and respect. You said, then we're at an impasse.
Stephen, no, we are at an impasse, okay? I love you.
Right. She says, okay, I love you. And that's another sign that she's a victim because she's trying to get away, I'm thinking. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the beginning of their relationship, when he would do this sort of thing, she would give in and submit. And this is a very common story, that at first she was confused. She thought, well, maybe it was my fault. Maybe he's just in a bad mood. Then over time, it might have become worse. And then she became more confused, like, is there something wrong with him? Is there something wrong with me? I don't know. And then ways of trying to deal with it, ways of trying to manage it. Maybe if I did this, maybe if we had a kid, it would help. Maybe if we took a vacation, a lot of accommodation, a lot of problem solving, a lot of searching for an answer. And then eventually she gets support. She is starting to hear from other people, might have even had other recordings that she reviewed, maybe showed other people, I don't know, and said like, what do you think about this? And they're like, that's abusive. And then she's like, really? Is that? Well, what is that? But no, maybe, because she married him for a reason, right? Because she loved him and she wanted to be in a relationship with him. So that's a hard pill to swallow, right? To realize that you're married to an abusive person. The father of your child or children is an abusive person. And what do you do about that? It's hard to cope with, right? So maybe some negotiation in her mind. Eventually, though, she lands on he's abusive. Okay, I need to talk with him about it. And I'm guessing that this is not the first time that she has brought it up with him. Maybe even when he's in a good mood, she's like, hey, we need to go to couple therapy, or I don't know. And I'm just going to take a guess and say they didn't go over with him. And so then we get to this point. I think they divorce around this time. She's starting to want to leave him, and she is wanting to take the car out. I don't know the context. And then the conversation is escalating, and she knows all the signs. She's been over it in her mind many times of, yeah, this is how it starts. These are the things that he says. This is the typical way in which he tries to gain control. This is the only way out of the conversation. So what's my next step? Well, I'm not going to take it anymore because I've tried so many other things in the past to try to stop it, to try to convince him or to try to manage it. It just gets worse over time. I'm completely powerless over the situation. So I can protect myself, and I've maybe talked with other people and they've said, you just leave, just get out or whatever. And so she is having this conversation with him. She's about to leave, but she knows that it's going to hurt him and it's going to make him angry. And she's worried about what he will do in that situation, which is normal to be worried. Because even without the threat, even if he's never said, I'm going to kill you or I'm going to do this or that, when you see someone that adamant and that locked in on needing power and control and that volatile, it's natural for victims to have some ideas about what they might be capable of, right? It doesn't take much of an imagination to start to think about murder, or he's a public figure, he could speak out against her and ruin her or sue her, who knows? So you start to worry about that. Maybe he's even done things like that. I don't know. So then you're thinking, well, I need to draw a boundary, but I need him to at least not be too angry. How can I manage that? So in the midst of this very difficult conversation, she starts to say, I love you. Okay, I love you. I do. I think as a way to try to soften it, because she wants to leave, maybe the relationship also, but she also doesn't want him to seek retribution against her. That's often the case. Now, I don't know. I'm speculating. I'm inserting a lot of thoughts into her head. It's possible that she just had an upwelling of love for him in that moment, which I'm guessing is not true. I'm guessing this is a strategy that she has.
Discipline and respect. He said, then we're at an impasse.
Stephen, no, we are at an impasse, okay? I love you, but Stephen, your abuse is sick.
Right, and it precedes this next thing. Your abuse is sick. I love you, but your abuse is sick. I think because she was planning on saying your abuse is sick, but then she thought, well, I need to soften the blow with this right up front, because I know from previous experience that if I just tell him this, he's really going to lose it. And so he likes it when I am, because it is a bit of a submissive. In the midst of all this, because he's certainly not being very affectionate. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. It's a little bit of a submissive statement, maybe because she knows that's what he's looking for, but she also follows it with, you're abusive.
Watch it. Watch it. Fucking watch it.
I'm gonna let go. I'll get what you need.
More threats. Watch it. I'm laughing because I don't know what else to do. It's awful. Watch what? Watch what? I'm going to take a guess and say that she knows what he's threatening. The dog seems to be alerted to this. But anyway, so she's now saying, I'm going to let that go. I think because she's like, I could say something to that. I could say like that's some serious BS, but I'm going to let that go because I need to go somewhere, I think. And she says, I need some space.
Fucking watch it.
I'm going to let go. I'll get what you need to get. And I need some space. We need to just stop engaging for a little bit, okay? I love you.
So again, she, I think, knows that if she says those kinds of things, it'll calm him down because it has the feeling of submissiveness, right? I mean, it also could be that she does love him and is trying to soothe him a little bit. It's not a bad thing in the midst of an argument to say, hey, I love you, but even if there's no abuse happening. So it could be something, I don't know. I don't want to see things through a particular lens. But so she's trying to get away right now. And I think she's worried that if she just bolts, that he'll escalate. And when she gets back, it'll be really terrible. She's like, don't do anything while I'm gone. All right, well, let's adjourn there. And when I get back, I'll continue talking about this topic. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.